Happy 420, everybody.
We can't see you, Drew.
I'm coming back. There I am, here.
Hello. Welcome back.
Just getting us shared out to one more group here.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, Zach.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing good. Hey, Kyle. Welcome. Alicia, thanks for joining.
Yeah, nice to see everyone.
From northbound I-15 in something that I really hate driving in.
Thanks for joining us.
Drive safely.
Yeah. So, how you doing, Drew?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I got one more group here, going to the Medical Cannabis group, and Pazzow, and welcome.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll just do the regular, the spiel that we always do. If you're joining us on the Facebook land through the live stream, welcome. So glad you're joining us. And if you'd like to become part of the Zoom program, so you could interact and actually speak and we can see you, please join our TRUCE community group. We got the link in there so you can join that. If you have any questions about anything we're talking about, drop it into the comments section of the Facebook chat, and we will be throwing that into the conversation. So that's how you can interact with us. I've said the spiel. Welcome, everybody. Christine, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for joining our TRUCE 420 live session that we have every Thursday. My co-host, Drew. We have today the owner of Life Elevated, the Heal You brand, is joining us, Justin Areola. And we also have with us later on in the show, the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about cannabis and parenting and how to have those conversations. We have Dean from Oregon who's going to be joining us, and he legally grows cannabis up north in Oregon and deals a little bit with mushrooms, and so we're going to hear from him. We also have some of our patient advocates who are part of our TRUCE community, who are parents themselves, and they're going to be talking about their different challenges and discussing cannabis with their kids and what that conversation looks like for them. Each of them have a unique story. So to kick off our 420 session hour, we're going to start with Justin. Hey, Justin, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for my temporary location. I kind of stepped out where it's not loud. We're doing a lot of processing today, and it's pretty loud in the lab, so I figured this was better.
This is exactly why we wanted to have you back on. I know you had told Drew and I on our last visit to your lab that some exciting things were coming, and we wanted to have you back and hear a little bit about that. But also, you were telling me a lot of interesting things about extractions that you were doing, and I wanted to give our population a moment to hear that and maybe get some education from you. So
right now we're doing cart distillation, which, as you guys know, has been a touchy subject here in Utah. But we've done multiple batches of oils from multiple cultivators now. We've successfully avoided having any D6 or D10 issues, non-detectable, nothing present there. And we're excited. We're doing, we just did an extraction from a couple cultivars that really ended up really, really good, with just a little bit of CBD in the mix. And so, it's all naturally extracted from the plant. So, this one, the oil was so good that we're not even adding terpenes to it. We're probably just going to put it out like it is, which is, there's a lot of what we're seeing in the market right now is like candy cane or unicorn pea or all these things that are just very highly flavored, or a lot of botanical terpenes. And so for us, if everybody's going right, we're going to probably turn left from that. And so we're using just cannabis extracted terpenes, natural cultivar flavors. So it's not like, we're not doing any type of flavoring or added anything to it really. If we do add terps back in, it's the terps that are extracted during distillation, or, we've got some really good looking stuff. So
I'm so glad you guys are doing that. Me and Drew had an opportunity to go on a tour of one of the other facilities, and that's definitely something they let us experience and smell the terpenes that were extracted from the cannabis plant, and it's just a whole different experience. It's just a whole different experience. Yeah,
it really
that's
is.
awesome.
Different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
So you
So
said
when-
you have
Really
this
the way
this
that
new
it should be
product.
done.
When is it going to hit the shelves? When can patients expect to get it?
So we just got a bee's knees that was totally cannabis derived extractions from our stuff. And that one's out. So that one will be at, Dragonfly and Wholesome and Beehive. And then we've got
It's good
another
stuff,
one
by
that
the
we
way.
just did. Yeah, thank you. We try to make sure that all our stuff is really smooth, easy for the patients to hit, and then really, has a good flavor, pleasant. And we're really happy that Bee's Knees is a really, really excellent cart. We're really happy with it. And so, that's kind of what we're doing. It takes us a little longer to get stuff out, but we're not mass producing and we're not hitting, crappy synthetic chain cannabinoids, and our stuff is good, and there's something to be said about that. We're also doing a bunch of solventless stuff. So we've just did some fresh frozen. We took in a bunch of fresh frozen bio from Dragonfly, actually, and it's a pineapple express cultivar. So we're doing live hash and then live rosin with that. So we're really happy to be able to do that. And then, some regular stuff. So we're going to do some dry CO2 extractions. And then we just released a puck of what we're calling it's a subcritical CO2 terp sauce. But it's terpene rich. It's about 16% terps and zero cost. So it's very, very smooth. The vapor clouds are very high producing. The terpene content is high. It feels really good. The effect. I've had a couple of arthritis patients who've been using it for a minute just to kind of deal with some of their RA stuff, and it really tones down inflammation in the joints, is what they're telling me. So we've done some market testing on it, and we're really excited about it. And it's 100% ethanol free, so it hasn't ever been touched with ethanol.
Nice.
It's a subcritical run, and it's really good. The palate's really good. We're also going to use some of that to do some tinctures and stuff for THCA, THC, CBG, and CBD, all in a ratio of 1-to-1. So that one's going to be good for like a pediatric patient, but also just generally lower your inflammation and take care of some of that stuff. So
Justin, can you explain? I know the differences, but for those that aren't aware, you said how you're doing CO2 extraction, which is one of the ways that we do extractions. The other way is people do ethanol.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
What are the differences? Like, why are you choosing CO2 versus ethanol? Can you explain? Is it different uses or different? Can you explain that out for me?
So people choose ethanol because it's faster, and so you can get more product done in a faster amount of time. I personally don't like ethanol extraction for a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason is, and there's nothing wrong with ethanol extraction if you handle it the right way. But for me, my biggest thing personally is it strips a lot of the chlorophylls and some of that stuff, and your crude oils look very dark and very don't quite smell the same as they do with the CO2 extracted oil. So our crude, we can bring that in up anywhere up to about 80% before we even do distillation on the CO2 side. It looks very clean. The color's nice, and the smell and the presentation is very pleasant. And so it's our preference. I'm not saying that people can't do good things with ethanol, but there's also hydrocarbons, so butane, propane, heptane. There are a number of producers here in the state that are using that, and some of the products look okay. I haven't personally tried some of the live resin products, but from what I've heard from some of the patients, they kind of taste gassy. They kind of, so for me, hydrocarbons is an art that you really have to be really, really good at to get it right. And me personally, that's not even something that I want to dabble in. So we chose CO2 because it's clean. And also I knew I could play in the subcritical stuff on CO2. I can make diamonds out of CO2 if I want. And then with our distillation, I could make a 95% cart if I want. But I'm choosing to stay in these therapeutic ranges where I have more of the minors, more of the terpene content. And you'll notice like my THC content on some of my carts, it says it's lower, but the cart hits really hard.
Right.
and you'll feel
Well,
it in
it's
your
more
face, or you right,
Right.
you'll feel it. You notice it when you take it in, even though it's not this 90% cart. And that a lot of that has to do with the miners and preserving those terpenes, even through a first pass distillation. So
Right.
the stuff that we're putting out now, you know, it's going to go through one pass of distillation, and then be ready to go. And there's a significant amount of terpenes still left in the oil. So we've been able to get it pretty high potency and maintain those terpenes just by running, you know, lower temp, slower extractions, higher vacuums, you know, taking our time. And that really shows in the stuff that's coming out. And I'll tell you guys one thing, you know, people are saying that ethanol extracted products is where the D6 and D10 is coming from. And we just ran some ethanol extracted crude from another extractor to prove a point. And it was that the ethanol isn't to blame. Ethanol's been being used for a long time. It's truly in the distillation and the short pathing process. So I took their oil and I ran it through my process, and I was able to create a clean oil that had 0 D6, D10. And the oil that I started with didn't really look that great. I was kind of hesitant to run it, but I ran it, and you know, we checked what we got, and then it's actually what we ended up with was really good. So, you know, that being said, ethanol has its place probably, but you know, we're not a Budweiser type of producer. We're not a mass producing kind of a house, you know, and so we don't want to produce that. We'd rather take our time and produce good stuff. And so,
are you calling some of the other people Budweiser type caliber products?
No, I'm not saying that about anybody's products, and I would never bash anybody's products publicly, but I think we all know, you know, like there's value products in the market, and there's more premium products in the market, and
then there's the PBR of cannabis.
Yeah, we try to give you guys a premium product at, you know, at a mid-range price, because it does cost us more to produce, and we do buy in smaller batches, and we do curate the things that we extract. And so you know, our stuff does cost a little bit more, but I promise you, I'm not even making turnkey on the stuff that I put out into the market. So,
but I can speak as a patient. I know I don't cough.
Let me speak as a patient. I like exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, Drew. Oh my gosh, Justin, I have to just say this, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I am. But and also, your carts hit so smooth. Like
it does.
I cough with most everybody's carts on the market, and it's kind of indicative for cannabis, right? So when you hit a Heal You cart, it really is the name. It heals you because it is
the bee's knees.
Yeah.
It is the bee's knees. I'll tell you what, your White Widow, that's my jam. That's my jam, man. And that's why we keep having you come back. I know it's a bias, but you produce such good, clean product, and we're so proud that you're here in the state, that you're one of our vendors, and that we can share and highlight what you've got going on with our patient population, and that you're educating us. I know Dean was sitting here nodding his head. Dean's a processor in another state who knows and follows TRUCE and all of our efforts here, because he has a few allies and friends here in Utah. And he's just nodding his head as you're talking about all the things that we're concerned about, and all the things that we want to see have positive happening in the space. You know, what is a clean product? So it's been amazing to have you. I know that you're in the middle of extracting, and we don't want to keep you too long, but thank you for joining us today. I really, truly appreciate you. I hope you do keep coming back and sharing with us all your knowledge and what other products you might be having coming out on the market.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'm always happy to jump in and join you guys, especially on a 420 type of situation. And you know, I know it's been challenging for patients, but you know, we're not everywhere where we need to be, and we're working on that too. You know, we're going to scale and do some stuff, but you know, biggest thing for me is I just got to make sure that it's quality and the stuff that gets out there. We are going to start publicizing our drops on our Instagram, so that people know when we have stuff and where it's going. As long as the state doesn't fine me for advertising, because they have threatened that. They have threatened that. So
that's awful. But I met Lindsay at the block, who is doing some advertising, and I'm so excited to see that. So we'll definitely encourage our patients to follow you on Instagram. Before you go, as we're transitioning into our next topic, because you are a legitimate owner of a cannabis company, but you have experience in this space prior to Utah coming online. You used to do stuff out of the
Yep.
state in the legal states.
Yep.
Our next topic at the end of the hour here is about parenting and cannabis. And we all have such very unique stories and perspectives and experiences with cannabis from our own lives. But I want to know, how has this been for you as a parent? You have older children, you have a younger child, and the transition of the cannabis movement over time as social acceptance has come along. You've had to have different experiences with your older kids than you did with your younger. Because I know I did. So can you give us a little bit of that before you leave us, so we can transition? Thank you.
For sure. Yeah. So for me, it's been interesting. So my older boys, who are, adult children now, they did have a very different experience, because it was something that was always like, my stuff was either in the garage, or, I didn't have a room dedicated to like this type of stuff. And I definitely didn't have the lab here. So all my work was done out of state and was kind of off their radar. Right. But they knew, and, it's hard to, I've been using cannabis products for a long time, especially topicals and stuff. And when they were younger, it was a little bit easier for me to be discreet. But as you guys know, when you start having teenagers in the house, they're not dumb. And so at some point, it really came down to, I had to have an honest conversation with my older boys. And the fact that, I could sit them down and show them actual things and say, look, these are the things that you're going to see. These are the things that we use for medicine. Let me show you the other side of this, aside from, oh, your friend's telling you that this is cool, or try this. And at some point, they started to hear me engage with other patients and people in the community. They would see me work for caregiving for different people. And so as they got older, it actually just kind of destigmatized the whole thing and took the mystery off of it. And they didn't really, it's not like I ever, like, they were kind of like, oh, that's dad and his medicine kind of a thing. And it's not like some big mystery or something that they didn't know about, or something that was like super edgy, right? They're just like, oh, my dad's had that forever kind of a thing. And that really worked well for them. And I used the same strategy with my youngest, who is 13 now. And I actually was very much more open with him at a younger age, to help normalize. But also, his mother and I, their mother and I don't, we have joint custody, and she's not as all in on the cannabis side. And so, you do have to walk sensitively, but having just a real honest conversation and talking about it, for me, was the best medicine, as far as that goes, because then it wasn't a mystery, right? They weren't learning from people at school, and sometimes they were educating people at school, like, no, actually, that's not true, or yes, there is. Like, so my youngest, kind of took on the whole DARE program and talked about medicinal use and wrote an essay and did some things. And so, they're not only were they educated, but also passionate about being protective of their dad and being in the industry and having it be a positive thing. Like, they've seen, work with patients, and it's something that they look at proudly, instead of something that I feel like I have to hide, or that they feel like they can't talk about. And so it's really changed for my youngest. They've really embraced that whole piece of, this is a medicine, and it can be a legitimate business. And, they've seen my lab, they've seen us build out and do all these things and what we're doing now. And it's really gotten a lot more normalized.
I think that's what we all tend to see across the country when we see medical programs come on. There is that legitimizing. The hardest thing for me was that a little bit, because I've been in the space, for 10 years. And some of you who follow TRUCE and know my story, my dad's a narcotics officer, retired. So growing up, my dialogue with my children is stay away from drugs. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. So when I started using that was the challenge. Now you have a different dialogue at home than what the narrative is at school. That was tricky for me. Every week, every DARE week was sort of a, geez, we got to go through this, and mostly with my youngest, because he was the one that really we had to protect and be concerned about. He was 3 when I started using, so it gets really scary that way. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate hearing that perspective from one of our vendors here in the state, and it helps us normalize the conversation a lot.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep.
hey,
I
Christine.
would, yes.
Sorry I'm late. I just got on.
Hi, hey, Shereen.
Hi, sorry.
That's okay. So thank you, Justin. I hope you stick around. I'm going to kind of open up the panel now for the others that I invited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I would love
Yep.
for your interaction.
I wanted to
Go
say
ahead.
something to Justin though about
Oh, go ahead, for sure.
about Heal You.
Yes, she wanted to ask. Please. Yes.
I really, really, really love it. I wanted to mention, I don't know if they do this all the time, but like when they label, they kind of like
Yeah.
put the label right on where your name is.
Yes.
I don't know if they can like.
Yeah. So sometimes they get a little. They're trying to put the stickers on and they just kind of move through it.
Yeah.
We've definitely talked about it for sure.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and sometimes we're just trying to hurry and get some stuff out on the shelves for you guys. You know, we're making smaller batches, and so
Yeah.
we definitely need to do some work on how we get our stickers on there for sure.
Oh,
Well,
I didn't know
and
if it was
Utah
you
also
guys.
needs to do something with the over labeling, because there is so much
Right.
waste for
Yeah.
a single cannabis product. Like, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah,
Not everything
true.
has to be labeled and this and
Yeah.
like. Think about what the waste and trash.
Yeah, we definitely are thinking about that also. You know, the sustainability is important to me, and at some point
For this.
Oh, it looks like you've a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, sorry.
I didn't delay.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin.
And Shereen
Justin,
had
can I
another.
share something with you real quick?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do, Zach.
Hey
Yeah.
guys. I just it really resonated with me when you were talking about the destigmatizing and making it normal for your kids as you move through it with different ages, and that the way you made those conversations happen, and as they saw you working and being immersed in it, it kind of reminded me of like me being at show and tell or something, or saying, what does my dad do? And I say, what if I said he's a scientist and I want to be like him when I grow up? You're like a weed scientist, you know, Dean Ford, like these weed scientists, that it's a dream that I didn't think I could be, you know, and it makes me want to dream bigger and think that, and taking that fear away from it of, this means jail, this means the dare, this means you're, you know, taken away from your family, and it's you're really removing some barriers. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. I wish I could stay a little bit longer. I'm starting to get that nervous feeling. I need to
We'll
go
make
check
some
on my
good
guys.
medicine.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. And I'm always happy to join, and hopefully I can get more products on more shelves as we move forward.
All right. Thanks, Justin. We'll
Definitely.
talk to you
Thanks
soon.
for joining us, Justin.
Yeah, thank you.
So to welcome the guests that I asked to step on for this second part of our show, like we keep mentioning, Dean. Hello, Dean. From Oregon. He is going to tell us a little bit about himself. I'm going to introduce each one of you and then ask you guys to tell us a little bit about you. I did ask 3 guests today. I asked Zach and Dean and Kristen to join us today to talk about parenting. Of course, if you guys want to offer some input, Alicia is going to be watching the monitor. Please just raise your hand so we can kind of keep track of who's wanting to interject and offer some commentary. Yeah, Dean, tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and a little bit of your backstory.
Oh, okay. Hi there. Yeah, so I'm in Oregon, and I own a brand called Entangled Biome. We create wellness products from botanicals, adaptogens, and mushrooms, and one of those adaptogens happens to be hemp. So we kind of view hemp as another plant medicine in the lineup of all the things that we were working with. We did start with a big emphasis on hemp, but have always had other adaptogens, and for a long time mushrooms in the mix as well. With regards to cannabis, I think I first grew cannabis about 20 2 years ago, and then that was still kind of that was a decriminalized situation. Living in Australia, they had decriminalized, and I decided to learn how to grow cannabis. But since I've been in Oregon, we have had decriminalization of cannabis since, I believe, 1978. And then we created a medical marijuana program in 1996. And then recreational marijuana started, I believe it was 2014. So the view on cannabis, particularly in this geographic region, has always been reasonably relaxed, I would say. That is, you know, decriminalization going back to 78 and medical marijuana programs back to 96. I've raised 4 kids in Oregon. My oldest stepdaughter, she's 21. My stepson's 18. And then I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old son. So literally they've all grown up around it from as long as they can remember. There's pretty much been cannabis growing alongside the house or in the backyard their entire lives during the summertime. They've been raised with it like any other, basically any other plant medicine. They understand that it's it's used both medicinally and recreationally. And so it's a very open dialogue. Destigmatize was brought up earlier. I would say cannabis is very much destigmatized in our family. And I had that experience growing up in the Midwest in the 80s where I was terrified of cannabis laws. I remember my mom would this and it scared me as a kid. I thought, geez, man, my mom's going to go to jail or some shit, you know, and I really did. I was scared of it. And, you know, it showed up a bit in high school, but I grew up in the era where, you know, it was fine to get wasted on beer, but it was a terrible tragedy to smoke cannabis. And so I've unlearned a lot of that since, you know, childhood, some 40 years ago. But it's not without challenge, of course. I can say that I had a moment with my oldest where she, I was having a moment of parental ignorance where I realized, oh, her and all of her friends are almost 15, and I got a wake-up call from one of the friends' moms that said, hey, did you happen to notice what your daughter posted on Instagram? And I'm like, shit, what? And so she had literally one of her friends had made a post on Instagram. Look at all the weed growing at DeFore's house. And I was like, what? So I had this experience early on with the oldest that I realized, hey, you know, they have access, they're going to have access. I should have been more mindful of minimizing their access. You know, she was the oldest and I was kind of playing naive to how old she was.
Right.
And so I'm going to take a pause here for a sec, but I wanted to say, so that experience led me to realize 2 things. One, it is really important to be mindful of keeping your cannabis in a safe place if you have kids in the house. And more specifically, I've learned through the years from many of friends' stories that edibles are a really bad idea in the house if you have kids, because I've had so many friends whose children have gotten into the edibles, and the amount of dosage that somebody can take by eating it because it tastes good can be very significant, particularly with a child. So my rule of thumb is no edibles, keep the THC secured, and have really open and honest conversations about how cannabis is used. So I'll take a pause there if we want to ask any questions.
Sure.
Or
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm going to go through and get everybody else's kind of input on background story, but it is challenging as you start to talk about these issues. I appreciate you sharing this. I am very relaxed about my cannabis use and my son seeing it. He's 15. He's grown up around me using it. He's also seen me very debilitated and having to have somebody help bring it. I use a volcano, so sometimes I'm often in the bathroom and somebody's having to bring that to me. So it is an interesting dialogue to have. You know, I assume that he will always act like just really can't ever make that assumption. You need to be mindful and careful. I think a lot of us know that cannabis is a lot safer than pharmaceutical drugs, and we get very comfortable, you know, and there are harms.
Or alcohol.
You know, or alcohol, exactly. I would rather have this open dialogue with all the parents and how we all navigate the conversation. Kristen, can we hear a little bit about you and your background and your story and journey into cannabis and the parenting? I know it's a big topic, but as you navigated
narrow it
youth,
down.
and then you do have to be very specific in our cannabis storytelling, especially because we're all stoned. But about your relationship with you using cannabis, and then when you needed to start that conversation with your littles.
Thank you
And
so
how
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I love this conversation because it just opens my mind to how different our situations are and how much we can learn from each other. And I'm taking it all in. But I came across cannabis in 2016 here in Salt Lake City. And I was using opioids, had been for about 3 years, and had an accidental fentanyl overdose in a hot tub from a fentanyl patch. And it was just kind of this wake up call. So my doctor suggested cannabis. I was practicing and married to a very highly religious partner at the time. And he and I navigated this together in the beginning. I really was a refugee, and I don't say that lightly, because my doctor was teaching me how to cross the border with cannabis in like a cooler, and how to keep it sealed, and how to make sure none of my lights were out in my Suburban. And like, it's so funny. I was just interviewing my kids today, going back and asking them questions, preparing for this panel, saying, guys, talk to me now that you're older. Like, okay, it's been 7 years since we started this cannabis journey. And we all just kind of laughed. And I think that the energy attached to it when I was going through this cannabis, I call it my initiation because I knew nothing. I call it just like, it's just so funny to see where it was there, how it was then and how it is now. But I learned a lot, and I've had to learn from my kids and with them. I always wanted to be super open with them about it. And that's one thing that I asked them today. What were some positive things and what were some negative things? You know, I'm sure I made every mistake in the book because I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't want to have negative energy attached to it, if that makes sense, because kids are not stupid, and it was illegal. So parenting now with cannabis is so different because it's like you can say, I'm legal. This is my doctor. It's a lot more open. But back then, so it's been a journey, but my intention was just to be open and honest. And so my daughter sat with me the first time I was dosing my edible, and I was laughing my head off. And it was just kind of this funny situation where we were learning together, but the conversation was open. So,
how old are your kids?
What?
How old are your kids?
So now they're 23, 20, 18, and 14.
And so you started this journey 7 years ago. Yeah. It's quite a journey.
Yeah. So they were different ages. Yeah.
Let me get Zach pulled in here, and then we'll really kind of start all of this chatting. Zach, Chase, thank you so much for joining and being part of this panel. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your journey into cannabis and how it relates to the parenting? Just a short view, because I know you have some complications we want to kind of dive into as well.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for the for hosting this every week. It's awesome. Appreciate you guys. I'm in Vegas right now, so speaking of being a parent, I get to enjoy a joint, flame to flower. Even though what's funny is most of the week when I've been out here, I've been working. I do solar for my job, and I've been using the crafty and introducing it to the people around me who have always smoked and are now realizing that there's different devices that they can use to get a more medical effect. And a lot of people are going to choose to use like for background. My background is I guess grew up in Utah. I Highland, from California originally, but grew up in Highland. My uncle died by suicide, and I found him when I was a kid. I had my own struggle with mental health, eating disorder, suicide attempts since I was, I think 7 was the first time I attempted, and had ones as recent as, being in like the mental hospital where after they had to pump my stomach with charcoal. I've overdosed on, heroin. I've, been through, my kids have seen me as an alcoholic for a while, functional for a while, but then not functional. I put, my life was a mess, and opioids, even prescription because of a back surgery. And then I've been in multiple car accidents, and where I've been the passenger, and every one of them had just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And except for one where I got hit from behind recently, about 2 years ago. But been a victim at times and pity to my pain. And I've seen what mental illness can creep up in my own life if I let that energy take a hold of me. And I can see what it does to other people and how they'll use these things, these band-aids, to escape. Cannabis has been a way for me to get high, elevated, maybe give me space to breathe, so that I can get back to myself. But I can't be too much THC from the pens all the time that are 96% THC, because like you've said, Christine, for a while, it's it's important to have those, that balance. And so this last year, I've been a lot more conscious about how I medicate, and the way I've spoken to my children about it is, I asked them the other day, how much weed do you have to, how much cannabis do you have to take for you to die? And they're like, well, I think 90 pills is what they said. And I'm like, 90 cannabis pills? So I don't think they still understand it yet, but because they're younger, they're 8 and 10.
Yeah.
But I show, I've showed them what the medicine looks like. I tell them, don't eat this. Just like if you have a gun in your home, don't, people that are carrying, make sure that you're have it in a lockbox and far away, to where they can't access it and they can't mess with it. And just being mindful about that, and then destigmatizing it by, I guess I've let them ask me questions and about sobriety. What's a safer version? I'd rather have them use this. If they were going to use something when they're older, after they're 25, when their prefrontal cortex is more developed, then I would have them use this. But if they're going to use, let's say, some crack or some pill that's been pressed that might have some fentanyl, I'd rather have them use this, even if this isn't available. So I guess it's about harm reduction and being, mindful of what level of what are they trying to address for their mental health, for their physical needs? When is this ever going to be a part of your child's life medically? And if they do it recreationally, do you have the talk before it ever happens? I think it's what I've heard from a lot of people. They started at a young age because the kids aren't dumb. So I really like that. I think they're very astute from a very young age. And they know our little vices, our things. And if it's not a vice, we treat it like an intentional thing, that this is how we function in this world. And then I think it makes the whole, the conversation easier and the relationship closer.
Absolutely. I appreciate you being so honest with your experience with substance and how you navigate it with your kids. I appreciate that so much. So
Yeah.
Dean, let me ask you, do you ever do prepping with your kids? Like, are they part of the harvest? Are they part of, because you said you deal with hemp.
Oh,
so you're
yeah.
not overly concerned about a THC situation with your kids because it's hemp, but how do they navigate that? Walk me through a harvest, walk me through a seedling, walk me through what a typical day at your home is like.
typical day at my home. That's the fun one. I abuse my espresso machine until about 9 in the morning. No. No.
Okay.
So
Surrounding camp, of course.
yeah, we purchase our hemp from a friend's farm. He's certified organic and biodynamic, but we do visit the farm. I mean, I have pictures of my kids like covered in trichomes from running around a hemp farm before. It was a pretty hilarious moment. And then they crawled into bales of straw, and then they looked like they got tarred and feathered. It was something else. But at home, I just we can grow 4 plants at all the time, anytime. I don't. I mean, I grow. I have 2 dedicated garden beds outside, and I grow a couple of big plants every year. So I kind of really enjoy the microbiology side of things. The soil microbiome is something that I'm really into. I like to geek out on, we keep a worm bin. My youngest son maintains the worm bin. So how they're involved or have exposure to cannabis is, yeah, sure. They'll see me pop seeds in February or March and keep them under the lights in the closet on a heat pad. Then we'll, as they get bigger, we'll sex them, identify if there's males and females. And then when they go outside, they'll be a part of making sure it gets watered, making sure it gets fed. We keep a worm bin for all of our veggie waste that is our predominant nutrient that we use on the cannabis. And we use mycorrhizal fungi in the soil and other organic. I mean, honestly, I would guess that if I wasn't around, they could probably do the whole thing by themselves. I mean, I don't know that they could at 10 and 13, but I wouldn't be surprised if they could grow the weed next year. But that said, yeah, I mean, it really is totally destigmatized in Oregon. It's just, I mean, kids are there. It's all around them. They have, I mean, there is no limitation in them accessing it. They can access it. They can access it from your house, their friend's house. I mean, access is not an issue. So as a parent, the issue is having hard conversations with your kid about whatever it is, about sex, about drugs, about consent, about things that are really important, and being able to be, grounded enough as a parent to have those conversations. So when I was asking my 13-year-old, I said, well, what do you see? And he's like, yeah, he goes, I have friends that are smoking weed. And I said, well, what do you feel about it? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, some of them are self-medicating instead of taking their ADD medicine. He goes, they don't want to take, basically methamphetamine. They would rather smoke weed. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, so at least in my experience here, it all comes down to conversation between the parent and the kid, as it should with most everything.
Yep. Agreed.
So, yeah, they also get to help at harvest and have helped in even processing at times.
I loved, and I wanted you to share this. We were going to have Annie, who's in Illinois. She was sick today, but she was going to be on our panel. So thank you, by the way, for jumping on such short notice, like an hour and a half before you came on, and I appreciate it. What I wanted to just demonstrate with our audience.
Helped me at a good time. It's great.
Oh, good. The thing I wanted to demonstrate for the audience was just how normal Dean appears to have handled just raising his kids around it. I mean, we always hear, right, Drew? We always hear the legislators and the regulators and the powers that be tell us, what about the children? What about the children? And I think
think of the children.
Yeah, think of the children. Make it normal.
Normalize it. Exactly. You're growing it in your garden. We always said, right next to your tomato plant. Oh, do you grow them next to the tomato plants? Okay, awesome.
I keep them. They're a little bit away from my tomato plants.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, Kristen, what were you going to say, hon?
I was just going to say, thank you, Dean. I think when we don't normalize it, we end up damaging our kids more because then they
Absolutely.
have this stigma. So for my kids, we had DCSF come to our home because of a report that I was smoking cannabis after my car accident. So I'm in a neck brace and the DCSF comes to the front porch, and I was super honest with open and honest with my kids. They were taking care of me, for Pete's sake. They were helping me. It wasn't something that was hidden from my children during this time. And so DCSF comes and takes each of my kids in their bedrooms alone. And I had to be out on the back patio, and my son, who's 10, is in his bedroom, in his safe place, being interrogated by a stranger with a tape recorder. I mean, it's just asinine. And I'm so grateful we're not there anymore. But that's the dynamic I've had to be unwinding, reprogramming, because our children aren't allowed to grow on it, with it, around it, touch it, be educated about it, understand it. And that's one thing my oldest daughter said was, Mom, I'm so grateful we talked about it, because when it became a social thing, I was able to navigate it from an intentional medicinal standpoint of what feels right for my body. Why am I ingesting this? What's my purpose? So she and I have had several beautiful experiences together with the plant. And then she's also taken those principles and experienced them on her own in the social recreational scene. But I'm so grateful she had some armor. And I think when we don't talk about our kids, like sex, like anything, when we don't talk about it and avoid it because it's uncomfortable, then they end up getting hurt in the long run.
And the normalizing part about it is, it's just like every normal medication. When if you're a parent that has heart problems, your kids know where your nitroglycerin tablets are in case of an emergency. And the kids can run and go grab those nitro pills. And if the kids recreationally take that nitro pill, it's going to be a horrible experience, because you educate them. Don't touch it, because it's an education process, just like an asthma inhaler. Again, kids will grab the inhaler for their parent that's having an asthma attack. That's normal. It's unfortunate, but it's a normal everyday thing. We need to normalize. It's a medicine, just like everything else.
Teach them how to be safe. Teach them how to respect. Zach King, you've had your hand up for a minute, hon. Would you like to add some
absolutely.
commentary?
Yeah. I just wanted to say also, I don't have children, but my first experience was as a child with cannabis. I had a detached retina and a lot of chronic pain and a lot of trauma emotionally and so many other ways. And cannabis was the only thing that really helped me. And now we have in the state of Utah the Compassionate Use Board, so that patients that are children can actually have safe access with the caregiver. And I think that's huge. And I think the more that we push up against the UMA and all these other different people that really are just uneducated because of prohibition, I think we can push back on a lot of the pain that we've suffered from. And a lot of the kids that are hurting, that say have special needs or that don't have all the help that they necessarily get from the pharmaceuticals, like with Adderall or different other pharmaceuticals, this might be a great option for a lot of these guys that are hurting, these young kids. And it really helped me. But I just think having that open dialogue and just being as real and as honest and frank as possible is huge. And I'm thankful for Christine and the rest of you guys just kind of paving that way for the rest of us, because as a kid, it was really scary. And I felt like I was bad and that I was wrong, but it was the only thing that made me feel good. And so I'm just grateful that there are kids that were like me that don't have to struggle with what I struggled with and what we all kind of went through. And we can kind of change the paradigm with love and compassion to educate those that don't really understand what they're doing to us with all these programs. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much for that, Zach. I agree. And Shireen, I will get to you in 1 second, hon. I had somebody who popped in on the Zoom call, and I'm going to throw him under the bus because I love him and he's a dear friend. Doug Rice, I saw you sneak in. So I want to ask you something. If you can hear me and you can participate, I hope you can. Doug Rice, for some of you who do know, or who don't know rather, was the former president of the Epilepsy Association of Utah. He was also on our board with TRUCE. He was a very prominent voice and face in our fight for safe access in the state. He is a caregiver to a nonverbal child that uses cannabis. She is an adult child when he was trying to fight for her access, but he definitely represented the voices of many, many, many families who had children who were underage and who were seeking access to whole plant access, meaning THC as well. So Doug, please, my dear friend, thank you so much for joining us unexpectedly. But I would love your opinion because you are former paramedic. I'm not sure if you're retired now, if you're still teaching, but you have a background and an experience. I would love to hear your insight on the parenting and cannabis and the conversation around that.
Well, this is just so strange because I never got a card myself. I'm a cancer survivor and I never got a card for myself. My wife had some health issues and got a card, and she never used any stuff. She never made a purchase here in the state of Utah. And being the state of Utah, everybody around here has a firearm, it seems like. And so having a disabled daughter, my wife is the kind of person that she's a mama bear and doesn't like to put herself out there with our child as a potential target for any ne'er-do-wells. And I haven't used that word in a long time, so I needed to say ne'er-do-well. anyway, so she got a concealed carry permit years and years ago, and she is letting her medical card expire because she's due up in 2024 and she wants to have some time between the expiration and when the concealed carry permit is due again. So that's just one aspect of it. It's been interesting listening to this conversation, how in areas where the plant is truly legal, or much more legal than it is here, it is so normalized to have it around. The mystique is gone, and it can actually be addressed as a potential treatment or cure for some stuff. As it is now, my daughter, she's using Epidiolex, which is basically the only FDA approved CBD oil. And we have, man, I'm glad this is kind of a closed circle here. We've told her neurologist that we've stopped giving her any type of a THC product. And for the most part, we have, because what we are giving her are gummies. We supplement the Epidiolex with gummies that have small amounts, trace amounts of THC, as you'd expect from a full spectrum product. So we see much better results from that than we do with just the Epidiolex. But
Christine and I were just talking about that, recording the episode of my podcast, Pothead Veteran. But when you combine the prescription synthetic with a full spectrum medicine, it counteracts all of the negative side effects that come with that Epidiolex, right. and the what's the other Marinol is the other.
Yes.
So those synthetics come with some kind of raunchy side effects. The paranoia, the dry mouth, and whatnot.
Drew. I think what we're seeing there, Drew, is just exactly what you're talking about. You're seeing some nasty side effects that are based on the fact that those are pretty much isolates. I'm not that familiar with Marinol, but I'm fairly certain that it is. And so when you have a full spectrum product, I think that you're getting a better product that is more balanced and it's better for the patient.
Exactly.
And you're seeing that. It's all being proved out anecdotally.
And doctors are recommending it.
So you know what's crazy? Can I share something? My ex-wife's a nurse, and I never thought she would have said this. I asked her. She destroyed my cannabis vaporizer when I first was trying to get off alcohol, and so I snuck out to Vegas on a real estate trip, bought a vaporizer, and met some guy, bought some weed, brought it back home, didn't hide it, left it in the bathroom. She smashed it with a hatchet out on my porch. She was so mad. Anyway, I thought I was going to lose my kids to cannabis and some bullshit. But then she just talked to me and said, hey, well, one thing is you got to think about what the kid is going to need. For example, you don't want someone, if they have epilepsy, to maybe be 25 and still using this medication that has all these side effects. Her son has epilepsy. And I babysit, or he comes over sometimes when I'm watching my boys, even though it's from her, you know, new husband, bonus dad. She, you know, we have like a really good, you know, relationship where we're all good co-parents or whatever. Anyway, so he when he sleeps over, sometimes I have to give him his seizure medication. It's the one that just totally changed his personality, and it's been not changed it, but it's just, I don't know how, maybe it's helped it out, but it seems like there's side effects that I've seen him without it and with him on. And so I don't know how to balance it out. But she said, and I couldn't believe she said that, she's like, yeah, I mean, it'd be better to just use something like probably cannabis. And I couldn't believe I heard that from her lips. But I think even, you know, some people are waking up when once it hits them, it hits their family, if there has to be other options. She hasn't even considered taking CBD, not even for her dog, until just recently. She'll give CBD now to her dogs, but not her kid. You know, and so that's how big the stigma is in my experience of this. And so I think she's opening up. She's seen how I've used as a way to heal and get off opioids, or having that conversation of, look at the harm and mess up my life was with when I did all these drugs and all these, went hard on alcohol, versus what cannabis or ketamine has done for me, or mushrooms or something. So anyway, just having the dialogue.
And Doug,
Yeah,
you probably know more about this, but the pharmaceutical epilepsy medications, a lot of those are really, really toxic and have so many side effects. And here in Utah, I know the law may have changed because I haven't followed it for the last year, but I know the Compassionate Use Board was at one point requiring they try 2 pharmaceutical medications before they allow them to use cannabis. And, you know, there's some serious side effects and permanent damage that can come from those drugs, right? You know more.
Oh yeah. There's gabapentin is used on a fairly regular basis in epileptics, and GABA's got some really, really bad side effects, and so does Keppra, one of the mainstream, one of the mainline drugs that they use, and Ashley's on Keppra, but we've been able to keep the dose fairly small, and you know that's really, with anything at all, really. The way that it's described is the difference between a treatment and a toxin is the dose, you know, and that's one of the cool things about cannabis. I mean, THC, when we look back on it, I mean, years and years ago, the stuff that was coming out of Mississippi State, one of the studies that I saw said that you would have to ingest, and they never could get to this point, but they said, based on what we've learned in animal studies, you would have to ingest 1,500 pounds of cannabis in 15 minutes to get to a toxic level. Now, that was
challenge accepted.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. But let's think about that for a minute. Let's say that weed has gotten exponentially. Let's say it's gotten 100 times more potent. I mean, that's possible from the 70s, right? Because I can't recall when that study came out. But when you think about that, think how crazy that is, Drew. I mean, you're still looking at a requirement of 15 pounds of product ingested in 15 minutes. And still you'd have to just say challenge accepted, because you're talking about something that has such a high threshold to get to a toxic level compared to some of these other pharmaceuticals that they're shoving down people's throats. It's ridiculous. And that's why I'm still kind of in this. There are some reasons that I have to be kind of fringe right now. Christine knows some of them, but I keep kind of a low profile these days, but I still like to check in with you guys and hear what's going on. And I think it's awesome that TRUCE and the patients are holding the legislators' feet to the fire, because I mean, having any of these other cannabinoids, these synthetic cannabinoids, jump up, that means that they've been there. They probably have been there all along. These are not new. They've always been there. But I think that it's time that if we are going to treat this stuff as a true medicine, okay, Vickers, let's get off your butt. Let's get into a lab and let's find out what these things are and what they do to people. Let's get better product. The state of Utah and the patients in the state of Utah deserve better product and a better program than what we've got.
I love how when you say his name, it sounds like a pejorative.
Please,
Yeah,
can I add?
Sorry, Shireen. I'm
please.
sorry, Shireen, and then Dean. Go ahead, Shireen. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would like that. Well, I'd like to ask Doug, because this is towards the Compassionate Use Board, and also I was at, I don't know, one of the meetings with the Department of Health where they mentioned how many numbers they have of the kids that they've approved. It's a small number. I don't know how they approve kids, but all I know is that my son has one physician that made a blanket statement basically that said he uses cannabis, he abuses it. And so the Compassionate Use Board won't even approve my kid because they believe that cannabis is a drug, like he'll abuse it. So it's just frustrating that there's still kids out there that can't even get access because they're not being looked at sufficiently. So I don't even know how
I think that you bring up some good points, and I think that's part of the problem is you've got healthcare professionals out there. The guy that we are seeing is the chief neurologist at the University of Utah. And that's about as far as I'm going to go to identify this guy. He absolutely is against the use of cannabis because THC causes seizures. Why would you want to give an epileptic who's having seizures something that causes seizures? Well, you know what?
Yeah.
If you overdose a kid on some of this stuff like gabapentin, and you can cause seizures too.
Exactly.
And then they won't remember it the next day.
Right. So it's ridiculous that we've got so many healthcare professionals in the state of Utah. And I'll tell you who I fault for this. The real estate agent that is in charge of the Utah Medical Association's PR. It is up to her. It is in her lap that she ought to be the one that is trying to come up with decent education for the healthcare professionals, the doctors that she represents in the state of Utah. This stuff has been legalized. It's up to her.
Say her name.
And they're very afraid of kids having access. And the age group that my kid is in, he has so much access in the black market. You'd be it'll make your head spin. Like they can educate you quicker than a pharmacist can. I mean, it's ridiculous.
They're smoking so much weed, whether parents want to believe it or not. They're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've been doing it since we were hunters and gatherers, living in caves. The kids have always been sneaking off.
Yeah. So I just don't understand why I can't, anyway, I yield my time.
I totally agree with you. And I think that the problem is squarely in the lap of the Utah Medical Association. They pushed against this. It got legalized anyway, and
it is interesting that they've been so incredibly quiet with the synthetics. I don't see anybody educating their doctors. And
absolutely right, and it's up to her. It is up to her. If she's going to be representing all of these doctors, then by God, she ought to be the one who's providing them with the education, or at least giving them the possibility of getting the education. We can see how problematic this is by the actions of the state. Oh, gee, we can't get enough qualified medical providers. Let's allow regular doctors who haven't been through the program at all to write X number of recommendations for this. That right there that's blatantly obvious that the system is not working the way that they've got it laid out, and yet they won't address it.
I know.
Let me just tell you, can I tell you just really quickly, and I'll make it really quick because it's a pretty long story. And I don't think I've told many people, I think I've told you, Christine, about my daughter's story. When she became a teenager and started middle school, she got involved with some kids that were doing some pretty stupid shit, and got into a bad crowd that taught her some really shitty ways to deal with depression. And she's not the only one, guys. There are so many kids out there that are doing these stupid things, that they're doing it because they have no relief and they don't want to be on drugs. They don't want to be on pharmaceuticals. They don't want to do any of that. So it's either hide it or be honest with your parents about it. And when the parents can be open and honest with your kids about it, then we can teach them how to do it responsibly. Because if you tell them not to, like you said, Kristen, they're going to do it anyway. The more you're on them about it, the more they're going to do it. And I've been trying to tell, there's a lot of parents that, I mean, I felt if it was me 10 years ago, I'd have been like, what? No. I feel totally different about it these days because of the experience I had with my daughter. She ended up in a treatment center. She begged me for help. I had to take her up to primary children's, and I had to check her into the psych ward. And I cried and cried and cried for days. I was told I'd be able to see her. They didn't let me see her. The way that they did their procedures, the way that, and it wasn't primary children's, it was actually the place that they placed her from primary children's. I don't want to speak any names or say anything yet because there is an open investigation with this company, but they didn't do any of her chart right. They didn't do any of her medications right. They hopped her up on 13 different medications, and she had never taken pills in her life. I'm a total naturalist. I would totally prefer her do cannabis than anything, but it's totally illegal. She got herself off of these drugs when she got out. It's such a long story. There's so much more to it, and I'm totally willing to tell it because it was a really, really horrible thing to go through with her. And I know there's a lot of other people, a lot of other parents that are going through the same thing.
There
and
are.
Are afraid to even talk about it out loud because there's a stigma.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely have to have you back to share more about that because I know we are hitting a deadline, and Christine is going to be on the radio at 6. So we'll
have to bring it up. It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, you jumped on and you were going to say something. I would love to give you some final thoughts before me and Drew kind of wrap it up. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to say a couple of quick things. One, when you look at Epidiolex, because that came up, when you look at Epidiolex and you're concerned about side effects, one of the things that's super important, in my opinion, is to realize what it's made with. Epidiolex is made with sucralose. There's a reason that the drug designers use sucralose, in my opinion, and that is it does have side effects. It is a neurotoxin. And so then when they get their drug approved, they can say, hey, look, CBD has side effects. And so only we can sell CBD. There is strategy behind designing a product that does have side effects. I just want to throw that out there. It's not a mystery. Another thing with regards to kids having access, here in Oregon, kids can have medical cards. So you can get, it doesn't matter how young your child is, if there's a medical condition, you can have a medical card. So like, I think it was Bill Murray said, the most dangerous thing about cannabis is getting caught with it. So most of my, colleagues that have kids, we get our kids medical marijuana cards because they're going to have cannabis more than likely, or be with somebody that has cannabis. And so if one of them has a medical marijuana card, we take away the law enforcement issue. And on the law enforcement issue, actually living in the state of Oregon, we've decriminalized all drugs. So we're in this situation where we're talking with our kids about the worst of the worst drugs that are out there because we're like, hey, don't get near anything that looks like these things. And over here, is cannabis, and it's harmless, and so are mushrooms. And so, if you're going to go do something with your friends on the weekend, do something that's harmless, and you're not going to end up in jail or in the hospital. And really, I mean, law enforcement, I don't think they care at all anymore in Oregon. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, children have access. So the question is them being well educated about their access. That's my opinion. And the last bit was, it could be that your lawmakers in Utah are not actually concerned about the kids having access to cannabis, but about their pharmaceutical donations that are coming into their political campaigns. I think more than likely they're concerned about pharmaceutical profit margin than kids. That's my 2 cents.
Well, and I talk a lot about propaganda. And one of the ways to spot propaganda is by certain phrases, and think of the children is the number one phrase. When you hear that coming from a legislator or your government, you're being manipulated. You're being emotionally manipulated to do whatever comes next in their goal. So if ever you hear it's never used in a good term, it's always a term of manipulation. So
can I just quickly add that she did, by the way, my daughter, she did get help. She got better. It was holistic therapy. And that those kinds of things got her off all the medication, and she actually goes in and does holistic therapy and has for about a year now, and she's doing wonderfully. So if any parent asks me, I'm like, go with holistic therapy, go with holistic therapy. They actually, some of these places now in Utah do actually consider the idea of helping some of these adolescent kids with cannabis. But, you know, we're in Utah. Who knows when that'll come along, but thank you for listening.
Yep. Kristen, Kristen and Chase, thank you so much for jumping on and visiting with us. Kristen, is there any parting words you'd like to offer to our audience?
I was just thinking that. So thank you for 2 seconds. I think that moving forward, it's always important to talk about our takeaway. And my takeaway for today about the parenting issue is that there are a lot more nitty gritties that I would love to get in and talk about. Feedback that I got from my kids as far as like conversations that are specifically wrapped around dosage and how mom might be acting when she takes this certain dose, and mom's going to settle into the couch for a little bit. So if you need a ride anywhere, I need you to communicate all of those little nitty gritties. And those are just little mind bubbles. But I think there's a lot more to talk about. And I think that together we can really continue the conversation amongst ourselves and amongst our peers, and really channel people and give people a safe place to open up and be vulnerable and honest and real. Because I think we live in a world where everyone wants to make it look like it's perfect, and life just isn't. And we're all dealing with these things. So I'm really grateful for TRUCE for providing a platform of safety and a place to be open and honest and real. So let's keep that conversation going. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kristen. And on that, I think I want to make sure that I tell our audience this. As TRUCE grows and develops, we're growing our community. And when there are a need, we want to make sure that we provide for needs. So if patients and parents are wanting to have a support group, a peer-to-peer support group once a month with TRUCE, I think that's something we should definitely work towards accommodating, because I think as a parent support group of patients and caregivers of cannabis, we will have a lot of information that we can feed to legislators. They need that feedback. They need those real live lived experiences. And so those who are following tonight, those who follow TRUCE, Kristen, Zach, all of you who joined us this evening, I hope you'll consider that. I hope you'll be consider joining a support group like that. It's something that would be hosted by all of us, and we can really dig into deeper topics. This was just a little bit of a brush over type of thing. So I do need to end the hour because I do need to get on to KRCL this evening. If you guys are watching this, you want to catch a little bit more information about cannabis in our state, the policies that are coming for this legislative session, former Senator Steve Urquhart will be on KRCL this evening, and he will be talking about mushrooms in the Divine Assembly and the Psilocybin Church here in Utah. So make sure you guys catch some of that. Thank you so much to all my guests. I always appreciate our volunteers as their commentary and feedback. Drew, you're amazing friend. Thank you for babysitting us tonight and letting us chat.
Yeah, thank you. As a non-parent of this conversation.
Yeah, I know you and Zach both, but I appreciate you both being here and joining in. So thank you, truthers who are following us on Facebook land and those beyond. I hope you join our TRUCE community. Help change hearts and minds by being part of the conversation. You have a wonderful night and enjoy your weekend. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.
Hey. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good stuff today. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you. Hey, guys.